Hello, everyone, and welcome to Channels Television's continued coverage of the Anambra governorship election 2021. I'm Sean Kimbaloye, live for you in Awka, the Anambra state capital, from our makeshift studio, where we're bringing you all the details, the update, and the latest about the governorship election in Anambra state. It's been some development, and it does look like things have not gone exactly the way INEC wanted it to go. This time around, INEC had given us some breaking news a few hours ago, and it's about the fact that the election will continue because of the malfunctioning of their new baby, the bimodal accreditation system, which will help to identify every voter that call at the polling unit. So this is going to take a focus tonight on the program, because as it stands, and it does look like it's at the point that it needs help. And tonight we'll be looking at what needs to be done to help get out of this stalemate. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Let's begin by letting you know twice today, INEC has given a press conference, giving updates on the election. The election which opened today, the 6th of November 2021, at about 8:30 a.m. in most of the polling units, and polls were expected to close at 2:30 p.m. But in many places, the bimodal accreditation process did not go according to plan. It failed in most places, and elections were delayed. Let's take a listen to the INEC Rec, Dr. Okechukwu Orji, who gave a press conference alongside the National Commissioner of INEC, Mr. Festus Okoye. Take a listen to them.
We are now receiving information on areas where, one, there were resistance to deployment by the Commission. Two, there were disruptions to the election process that already commenced. Three, where we have sustained malfunctioning of the accreditation device, the BVAS. And four, where we were unable to deploy as a commission. In each case, the Commission's regulations and guidelines and other existing laws will be used to address these issues. Where elections held, collation of results will proceed, and the applicable EC40G instrument will be used in line with the provisions of the electoral law. If there are areas where there's a determination that the collation of results cannot take place at the RA collation centers, collation of results will now take place at the LGA collation centers.
If we have 2,000 voters on the queue by 4 p.m. today, until the last voter on that particular queue votes, the poll will not close. So if the last voter votes on Monday, voting will continue. That's exactly what we said.
And then you heard what the INEC Rec said there, and Mr. Festus Okoye, the National Commissioner of INEC. Well, there are more reasons given for the extension. First and foremost, the first time when they did extend from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. We met up with the INEC rec, Dr. Kichiku Orji, and he gave some reasons. I'd like you to listen to some of the reasons he gave in an earlier chat with Channels Television. Take a listen to him.
Part of the reports we got regarding our deployment in the different polling units, we were not able to fully deploy in some of the polling units, and because of several reasons. One, we were prevented by community members in some local governments from deploying, so we had resistance from community members. In others, we had our materials, election materials, snatched and destroyed. Example is Oba 1 and Oba 2 wards, RAs, in Idemili South local government, where materials for up to 57 polling units were snatched away.
So what are you going to do in that respect? Do you have alternative plans? Because if materials are snatched and destroyed, what would you do? Do you have alternative to replace them? Or what are you doing to the election in those areas? Are you postponing election in those areas, or what are you doing exactly?
This is a decision that will be taken after this, but the process has to be completed, and then a thorough assessment of what has happened will take place. And then the commission will now be in a position to state the next line of action. I don't consider them major security issue, because the security situation has been very, very pleasant to us. In fact, it's a pleasant surprise to many who expected that there will be breakdown of law and order in Anambra in the course of this election. But you can see that everything went on quite smoothly, quite peacefully. The challenges we had were that some of the transporters that we had made arrangements with and paid their sign-on fees upfront had reneged and declined to offer their services. And some of the ad hoc staff that we had recruited could not continue, dropped out in the process.
All right, then you heard the INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner in Anambra State, Dr. Kichiku Orji, about the reasons for the extension of time. He did say that there were attacks and there were disturbances by people in some of the communities, and that's the reason why there were delays in the start to the election. But some of the candidates in this race are already talking. They talked about the election and how the exercise went. First and foremost, let's begin with the candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, who spoke after he eventually got to vote, because it took almost 5 hours for him to get accredited. He was one of those who experienced some problems in getting accredited. Professor Soludo voted at Umueze Usuofia of Agwata local government area of Anambra State. And here are some of his thoughts about the exercise.
You can see the crowd in here massively. I understand over 700 of them that came, 800 of them that were here since 7:30 this morning to cast their vote. And probably, I understand, maybe about 20 have been able to do so up until this hour, which is almost 4 p.m. The close of voting. I don't even know, even if you put electricity here, at the rate at which the machine is going, maybe one person per hour, I'm not sure you'll finish even till tomorrow. So it's quite very concerning, quite frankly. And what is happening in my own polling booth here seems to represent largely the pool of the report that I have gotten around the state. Several places, a few places, I understand, they say it worked relatively well. But in a vast majority of the places around the state, it just hasn't worked well. I understand some people have now, over the last 30 minutes, in some few polling units, randomly across the local government, because I'm in touch. I haven't left here since 11:30. I refuse to leave. I've got to stay here and I must cast my vote. But I won't jump the queue. I'm not going to jump the queue and then get, be one of those privileged 20 to vote. No. These people, these elderly women, some of them in their 70s, some in their 80s, have been here since morning. And they can't get to vote. Several have left. I've seen hundreds of them walk home because, of course, they can't sit here all day going. So I've just seen the release by the INEC President Electoral Commissioner talking about the extension, namely that if you are here if you are here by 4 p.m., you will still be allowed to cast your vote. That's fair enough. And there is also implicit in it, my own understanding, that there is a possibility of extending the voting time through to tomorrow.
Then Professor Chukuma Soludo of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, his thoughts after the casting his ballot. You heard some of his reactions to the election. Let's go to Inewi in Otolo, Ward 1 of Inewi South local government area, where the candidate of the YPP, Senator Ifeanyi Uba, cast his vote. He also shared his thoughts about the exercise in Otolo, Ward 1 of Inewi South LGA. Take a listen to him.
The most important thing is to appreciate people coming in, people trooping in mass. You can see, I don't think we can have what they call apathy from this polling unit. People are here to vote. We have some little challenges with the biometrics, but I hope we'll resolve it. In my own, it took some time, but it was sorted out. But there's delay in materials coming to the polling units, and we need to look at it. We have some challenges, and we have some reports, and I want to address that. Well, we look at what happened, because for me, I'm sure, you can see, this is, I did it in Senate, and I'm going to do it now. They should conduct their behavior very well, exercise their civic responsibility, and then at the end of the day, we'll look at the results.
Then that is Senator Ifeanyi Uba of the YPP. Let's go to Agwata again, where the candidate of All Progressives Congress APC, Senator Andy Uba, cast his vote at Ward 16, polling unit 17 in Uga, Agwata local government area. He also shared his views on the exercise. His reactions at some point. Also, Valentine Ozigbo of the PDP also cast his ballot. It is at the Amesi ward of Agwata local government area. All right then, let's get the conversation started and the assessment of this election based on what we're seeing, based on INEC is saying. We may not just be getting the result as early as we envisage, but the exercise in some areas we understand is continuing. Tonight, let's first and foremost look at the conduct, and later on we'll look at the security part of things, because the conduct now is it's somewhat kind of stalemate that we have seen. I'm being joined by the first Vice President of the Nigerian Bar Association, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and the lead of, you're not a senior advocate?
No, I'm not.
Okay, apologies. the first Vice President of the NBA, Mr. Popo Martins. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
Thank you
for seeing the vision.
All right. Since I said it, it may just happen.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Ezenwa Nwagu, he has been with us from morning and here again to give us an appraisal of what has happened today. He's on the board of Yaga Africa, one of the election observer group, and also a member of the election situation room. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
My pleasure.
One man that you perhaps know too well, a former resident electoral commissioner in in Rivers and in Bayelsa State, isn't it? Mr. Anedi Ikoiwak. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you very much.
What a way to assess this situation from the NBA point of view, from the election observer point of view, and from someone who had also been a resident electoral commissioner. You know where it pinches, because I know when you were in Rivers, tough elections that you have also supervised. But let me begin with you. With what Mr. Orji is facing right now, is like a stalemate, where you have to extend the timing of the voting in an election like this, testing the beavers. What does this mean? Where do you think the issue came from?
Well, I want to say that the introduction of a new system for accreditation and the voting, which has not actually gone through a lot of tests running, so on, will actually have effects. And considering the fact that the election in Anambra had been an election that there was this issue of whether you will hold or will not hold and what have you. So there was tension everywhere. And the expectation was that INEC would deploy whatsoever they have as a new method and try to improve the credibility of the elections. And I think that is what the Commission was trying to do. And the course of doing that, the sensitivity of the device may have affected some of the things that they were out to do. So I think that they will need to have to look at the sensitivity of that device. Because I remember that when INEC introduced the car reader newly, there was that hiccup at the beginning. And the ICT and other ECOP in INEC had to put their heads together and look at how to improve on the device. So I will advise that we take this as a part of our learning process to improve our electoral system. The fact is that there is some element of sincerity on the side of INEC to improve our system. And let the Nigerian people go with that, so that after Anambra, we'll have a better run in the next election, maybe in Osun and Ekiti. Then before we get to the general election in 2023, we would have taken care of some of the hiccups that we have.
I wanted us to, from the control room, if we can get that device, in case for those who are not in Anambra or who are not in Anambra who do not know what the device looks like, if we can show them that it looks like a tablet. It has a point where you can use your fingerprint to swipe and get accredited. It also has a screen where you can see in the details. I don't know if the control room can show our viewers what that device looks like, what became somewhat kind of a problem for INEC today. But beyond the beavers is also the issue where Dr. Orji said that there was some disruption from people in some community that did not allow them to deploy early enough. What are your thoughts on that kind of situation? Okay, so that's the device there, Mr. Nwagu. On the failure of the beavers.
Well, I think it's exciting that we are shifting from the point of whether election would hold or not hold to the point where we are examining the administration of election. That for me is key. that first and foremost, I was making a joke. I said, I'm now hearing about public outcry that the beaver did not function in many places. I didn't know that we had public that would, cry in Anambra about it. So we're excited about that. But all of this, the bigger challenge is that INEC anticipated this, and that is why this election was christened an unusual election. Unusual because you knew that even in good times, there are elements who may want to disrupt the process. So what was important was what was the remedy mechanism that was on ground. And all the time that INEC was talking prior to this time, when it was talking about having done 12, 13, 10 of what's in its bucket, it kept talking about the fact that it had contingency arrangements should this, because you would have done several scenario building. So I think that what is important is the remedy that has come, which is to say, yes, there were disruptions, let's extend the time. And I think that for me, it's fine. Like he said, you have a commission that is constantly working to improve the process, and that is very key. Every time is a learning curve, but technology can only enable a good process. Technology enables your good process. If your process is bad, technology will not enhance it. So we have a situation in which we also need to now interrogate the Commission's technology acquisition and adoption platform. It's not interrogated. You had 87 polling units in Isoko South 1 Federal Constituency, where we tested these beavers. And then we are taking it wholesale into 5,000 plus polling units. I think there's something that is not sitting well there. We needed to have scaled up, incrementally. And that's the way to go. So because technology, no matter how beautiful it is, will have hitches. And that hitch can cause you, embarrassment, the kind in which we are trying to get out of right now. But whatever it is, we've made progress. We've come to that point where we are embracing technology, we are learning from it, we are failing, we are reworking it, and at the end of the day, we'll see how we improve.
There are legal implications because the law stipulates usually the window for an election, and when for some reasons you have to step out of that window, there are legal implications. Mr. Ipopo Martins John is here to give us from the NBA. I'd like you to also comment on the issue of the beavers that has failed INEC today and failed the people of Anambra State, partly in so many places. Did you see this coming? Are you disappointed?
I'm highly disappointed. Let's just say the way it is. I'm highly disappointed because prior to now, INEC has upped their game. I was in Edo State. The whole process was beautiful. In recent times, all the elections conducted by INEC have been an improvement on the past one. Then we're expecting something, if you cannot maintain that standard, please don't drop below that standard. And all of a sudden, there's a drop in that standard. When we were first hearing the reports from our various agents that the devices were not working, I was very surprised because we have not heard of INEC. The INEC device is not working for quite a long time. We're thinking it was going to be maybe in this localized area, but eventually it happens to be statewide. Now the question is, if they have tested, the problem is not INEC deciding to upgrade on the system of the device they are using. No. The problem is not knowing that there might be hitches like this and prepare for same. And I want to say that this election is one of the best times that INEC had the opportunity of writing their name in gold. Why? Because the people did not actually come out as expected. Now, if the people have come out as expected, there will be chaos, there will be fight. But because they were restricted in numbers in the polling units, from our perspective, the voting strength was about 10 to 12% of the total number of voters in the voters register to do the comparative statistics of it. So assuming about 20 to 30% came out to vote, it will be chaotic. So I really do think, well, thank God they are adopting better technological devices, but it is not too good that they did not on their own, humanly, they didn't upgrade their own thinking process to envisage a situation like this on how to tackle it.
Well, I don't think that there is usually a backup, a manual backup, should the technology fail. Well, one of the assurances INEC gave for this election is that that device have the capability of working online and offline. That it has the data on for every polling unit loaded on each of these devices, so it can work without having to go online, assuming it was a network problem. But this time around, I'm not sure that it was a network problem. It does look like it was a functionality or the issue of the functionality of the device, and also in some cases from some of the reactions that we have gotten about the usage of those who are administering it. So you want to talk?
We ended this go beyond the device, how it works or it was not working, to look at the deployment of the HACCP staff. In the situation in Anambra, we need to know whether those persons that were trained for this election were the actual persons deployed. You know, in an election is a process, but the day election is an event. When the process is put in place and the event comes, it's just like a theater. You draw the curtain and the play has to go on. You know, so on the election day, in a situation where a trained personnel is off the beats, you may have a situation where the play has to go on, and persons now put on that beat may not have had the know-how of handling what is.
Did you think INEC shot itself in the foot? Because for almost 8 years, INEC deployed the smart card readers, and there's a manual process. Should the smart card readers fail, there is a manual means of backing it up. There is what they call the incident form that you have to fill. But I'm not sure there is an incident form in the case.
No, there's a challenge. We shut down the incident form because it created opportunity for manipulation. But what is at stake here, in my view, is training and usability of the EVA. You found out that, yes, my brother was talking about the contingency arrangements that had to be put on the ground. They have what they call the technical assistance. But the challenge is that if you follow how this election came without, standing in for INEC, you will know that they have Anambra on ground had the real challenges in terms of even having to work or just about 3 days in a week, running helter-skelter, their offices were under attack. All of those issues, you need to bring it to the fore. But the challenge, like we kept on saying, you don't lower the standard of integrity of the election because you are doing unusual things. Because the truth of the matter is that if those technicians were thrown in, and they were thrown in most places where they thrown in, many of them didn't even know what to do. That's what we saw where we went to. They came to the place, there is a lift that got spoiled in the hotel where I am. The man that came to repair it was reading manual, was now studying manual for a work that he was brought, which means he had no understanding of the work that he came to do. But like we need to appreciate that is a learning curve for us as the people, is a learning curve for INEC. But we need to understand and appreciate that for me, and I've continually told Yaga Africa in the statement when the beaver was introduced, we embrace it with cautious optimism. We said let's scale this. There was a lot of chest thumping after Isoko, the federal constituency, and I said it's 87 polling units, so you shouldn't beat your chest.
That wasn't a good test for statewide.
Yes,
you're talking about less than 50,000
and then
voters.
Here you have 5,000 polling units with voting capability of about 2.5 million people. But it's too close to call now in terms of to say what the overall percentage for voting in this election is, because with this extension, you need to be able to round it up to be able to say this is what the voting outcome, the number of people who came out.
But let's also look at what INEC said they experienced, and some of the reasons why they extended the time of the voting. They said in some communities they were disrupted. The exercise was disrupted. That's one of the reasons. Transportation difficulty. That in fact, and this has happened severally. Now the issue, and this also brings the issue of contract and the breach of contract between the transportation companies, the association of the transporters that went and met with INEC. They were given money to execute the job, but they didn't show up. That's what INEC told us today. That some of these guys, at the last minute, on the day of the election, they pulled out on INEC. What do you have to say to that?
I will agree with them, because it also happened to us. We made arrangements for certain vehicles to convey us around, but eventually, in fact, some of us have to stay back in the hotels, but we didn't have a vehicle to move this morning, and they have to pull back just this morning. When we were calling them, where were you? They said, we're no longer coming. So I will assume, because if I even while on the field, I was looking at youth corpers and those who were working as the presiding officers. I actually had to deep in my heart to really appreciate them, because from the tension that was in the system, that was in the state, prior to now, it takes the heart of a lion to come out to say you want to conduct that election. Also, if INEC is saying that part of their personnel, that's adult personnel, pulled out, we must have to agree with them. But on the issue of community disturbance, to be very frank, we didn't hear such a community.
That's one of the things that Dr. Oji said. There were resistance in some community. Yeah. Apart from the resistance, is also disruption. And in fact, they were not allowed entrance by some officials.
There are Yaga observers who also were denied in a particular. But the big thing, INEC will need to learn expectation management. I think that if you understand that you are dealing with a sociological system, that there will be variables that you cannot control. The kind of optimism, infectious optimism that comes. Every question that was posed, there was this response that we have contingency, because all of this, there is none that is not that is not known, that was not expected. But I listened to my brother who is in charge of information, and he said this was going to happen, but that they knew that there will be some of their staff who may not be able to deploy. And the expectation was that we will have backed it up with some of your own staff, because the outsourcing of conduct of election does not deprive those who we pay money to conduct election, because this is just to raise the trust level. That was why you now brought in all of these people. There are staff of INEC who are actually paid to conduct elections. If there are challenges, the expectation is that they will have been trained
to respond to
it, except if they themselves
are part of it. Mr. Kowak, I know you experienced, because I spoke to you, you had this kind of frustration where transporters pulled carpet off your feet on the day of election. The legal implication of that, Mr. Akpofo-Martin?
Well, it depends on what you mean by legal implication. The contract between the drivers, the transporters, and INEC, they will sort it out contract-wise, because there's a breach of contract. But the contract between INEC and the people, that's what he's saying, that they have given assurance that they have contingency plans.
But the question is, this is a civic responsibility managed by INEC. INEC could not do this all by itself. It contracted Transport Association and transporters to say, help us achieve this. And at the last minute, there was a breach of that contract. Is that a civil offense or a criminal offense in that sense?
It's not a criminal offense. It's a civil contract between transporters and INEC. So
could that be tantamount to sort of sabotaging a national assignment or an assignment that is of high importance.
That would be stretching the argument too far, because we all agree as we sit here that the environment itself did not call for confidence to come out. So if everybody has this.
But why did you take the contract? Why did you collect INEC's money?
Yes, because.
Why did you say you were going to transport their, and on the day of the election, you failed to show up? I mean,
let me finish.
Because I think it goes beyond breach of contract. It goes beyond.
No, I will not agree. What was, we were not there when the terms of contract were entered. Probably the transporter might have raised all these issues, and they assured them that before then, the security will be tight or things will be better. But they did not see appreciable improvement in the security system. And they had to pull out. And they didn't even pull out yesterday or 2 days before. This morning, that is to say, overnight, they assessed the situation and they came to the conclusion that it's not safe to come out.
No, but Mr. Elkowa, you have experienced this kind of thing before.
Yes. I think I will look at it as a bit of sabotage on the side of the transporter. We've had these situations where people just think of what they can get from the system, not what they can put, what they can bring to the system. People just think that's okay, it's part of my national cake. I pick up the money, you have a contract to deploy a bus. On the day of the elections you put out, you did not even give the commission a period, to pull out so that the commission can make a contingency plan. He has already laid out that this number of persons will go on this bus, and immediately 1 or 2 is out. You are now putting that process in jeopardy because people cannot move. So I think that we should look beyond people not just looking at the security situation.
I don't think it's just a breach of contract.
So.
I think it goes beyond that.
To sabotage that system.
Yeah, because now what you have done is that it's going to cost a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to prosecute an election. So when you pull out, not because of a mechanical problem, or you not just 1 or 2 vehicles, several of those vehicles.
It's a contractual problem. The prevailing conditions that necessitated others discharging this responsibility exist for the same people who now will hoist this regime of excuse about insecurity. Those who, because it's not as if the vendors all on the because it's a union. There's a union that has control over this.
Yeah.
So this union, some of their members, in spite of whatever we are talking about, discharged their responsibility. And in some places, some did not do that. And my worry is that this union has become very, whether it's 2019, whether it's 2014, their service delivery, has always had this challenge. So in dealing with them, we had, I think, at some point, we had talked about what you must be thinking around. If not these folks, what can we do? Yeah. Because we can't continue to face this.
I remember there was a time that we even had a conversation. Yeah. Instead of using this guy, we may not think that there is a high level of importance attached to whatever they are doing. Yeah. There are more established transport companies.
That's what I'm saying.
We had that conversation.
That's what I'm saying.
So these guys, they behave like as if they don't care, and the whole system has been messed up just because of their failure.
Anybody who talks about, let me tell you, if you went into the community, you will see that the determination to hold this election is not so much, as important as the security became, the community themselves. And we are, like I keep saying, we are very uncharitable to ourselves. All of us have called the people of Anambra to come out and vote, and they responded to us. They did respond to us. There is a lot of their elders, everybody said, come out and vote. If you go to the communities, you see the way I've told people that even if you bring a whole contingent of army and navy and if the community people don't want election, they will not have it. They will not have it. So these folks who continue to sabotage elections, we need to begin to think around how to work around them. Because this is this become perennial now.
It has
nothing to do with security.
And again,
this is a culture.
Okay, Mr. Kowa.
I think that INEC should look at their agreement, whatsoever they had with the transport union. Because I know what INEC agreement with the transport union is not a state affair. It's a national affair where the Nigerian Union of Road Transport sits down with INEC and agree, and then communicates to the states. And the resident electoral commissioners at the state had to also meet with the union at the state level. Then there is also arrangement where the EOs also meet with the union at the local government levels. So it's not something that you think is an ad hoc thing. It's something that is in existence.
Mr.
For some years now.
Yeah, let me ask you this
that,
question. Yeah. I'm not sure they are on the same level in terms of the engagement. INEC engages with political parties before an election. There's a consistent, I think, the quarterly engagement. You can clarify for us. There's a quarterly, I think, engagement with the political party, with the civil society, and security. I think INEC needs to start thinking about bringing these guys also, whether as part of the security or part of another sector that needs to be engaged officially, because I think it's usually an ad hoc arrangement in engaging them. Because if they are seen as a stakeholder, because the kind of engagement that INEC has with the security agencies is another level. So they see themselves as part of it. The police, for example, see themselves as a primary absolutely in the election. So it's another level. I don't know if that will work. If at that level they are engaged more robustly, like you engage
partners. Like he said, the INEC could expand their scope, their network of the logistics area. Bring in other, especially the private sector transport system, and see what they can do, because they have narrowed it down to Nigerian, road transport workers, and they have done that for the past, I think, about 7 years, and there is still that problem of you not being sure that the bus will come on time. You will tell the buses that, look, all the drivers should park at INEC office in the evening, so that we will leave in the morning. By the morning, you will not see them.
Drivers will not show.
After collecting, because the agreement is that 50% of the money has to be given to them.
Probably that's where the problem is. Well, there's a third party between INEC and the direct drivers. So somebody contracted on their behalf. How are you so sure what trickles down to the real drivers or the real owner of the buses? Because National Union of Road Transport, they don't own buses. It's a union of owners of drivers.
It's an association.
Yes, an association of drivers or owners, but they are not the actual owners of the buses. So how are we so sure that
there's no direct contract?
There's no direct contract. So what we are saying now, maybe it's time to start having direct contact.
I'm not even sure. You are the lawyer here. I'm not sure that if you enter into a contract with an association, that you can seek a remedy because it's with the association. The man who breached the contract is just an individual in the association. I'm not sure INEC can even take anyone who fail to show up to court. I'm not sure that is possible.
Yeah, because having entered an agreement, the association that entered into an agreement with INEC has a duty to perform. So INEC can actually go to court against the association, but the question is, what remedy will you actually get? But they are not the real owners of the vehicle. So even if there's a judgment against the association, it might actually not address
the problem. So, I mean, there is another angle to all of this. Now, if there is an election, and usually in an election process, if you shift anything by even 1 minute or 30 minutes, it trickles. There is a dovetailing effect. The legal implication of extending this election, because if election voting is extended to tomorrow, then there is a legal implication, because the law permits, states how and the ways by which INEC can conduct this election. But we'll take a break. And when we come back, we hear the legal implication, the operation, and you give us an insight into what is happening. We'll take a break, everyone. But when we come back, what is happening in relation to INEC, the conduct of Anambra governorship election, and the way forward. Join us again, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. The continued coverage of the Anambra governorship election. We're live for you here from our makeshift studio in Awka, the Anambra state capital. Welcome, everyone. It's not as expected, not what you envisaged, not what you thought of when we started out this morning, when we thought that this election will end at 2:30 p.m. as stipulated in INEC's guideline. But it does look now that we have to wait longer. Tonight, we are assessing what INEC has done and the delay in the conclusion of the polls. Mr. Akpopo Martins John is the first vice president of the Nigerian Bar Association, looking at the situation for us and analyzing. Mr. Izenwa Uwagu is a member of the board of Yaga Africa, one of the election observer group, and also a member of the civil society election situation room. Mr. Anyedi Ikowak was with INEC, is a former resident electoral commissioner with INEC. He served in Rivers and Bayelsa State, I think. So many states. And that's why you're able to give us a deep insight. So on this stretch of looking at the conduct and what INEC did, the implication of shifting or extending the voting, what can you tell us from a legal point of view? The implication of the extension?
Well, the implication is the election is still ongoing. Ordinarily, the election would have ended by 2:30 today. But since the election did not end and there was an extension, the legal implication is that election, we are seeing the electoral process. Voting is still ongoing. What we just have is a break. Tomorrow will continue. So the election has not ended. That is the legal implication. By the time INEC declared I didn't get exactly when they said the election is going to end by tomorrow, but that would be the actual legal date the election ended.
INEC didn't even say it's going to end tomorrow. They said as long as the voting continues. They
said the last person will vote.
But in fact, the problem was they said they were still even assessing the situation, that in some areas where there are difficulties, they will deploy, and as long as they are able to vote, they will vote.
I think they have the backing of the law to extend the period of elections, and until that process is completed. You know, it may be at the end of tomorrow, there may still be some pockets of places where the elections may not still hold. And INEC can then determine, because you must also know that even after determining the results of the elections, that results will now be looked at whether it has met up with the provisions of declaration. And if it does not make up with the provision of the declaration, you will still have elections that will be all inconclusive to conclude the elections. So the time is still there. That period of inconclusive elections is still part of the election.
But they did say that they are going to go ahead with coalition where the results are ready.
That was the information I have been seeking for, that I've just clarified. But what I saw was an extension. Yeah. But some social media report was saying till tomorrow. But now that it has been clarified that it is not till tomorrow, it is open-ended, I think it is really not good. We are likely going to run into some legal issues or some... yes, because...
It may not be open-ended. The fact is that after there may be collation of results. If that collation does not meet the declaration,
no,
there will now be an extension. That extension is what you may call...
Where I'm disagreeing is that there must be a time frame for voting to stop.
I think the statement of Dr. G is very clear. They are going to assess, which means that there has to be another update.
Yeah.
So that assessment will take place when they actually determine the number of polling units where this disruption took place. So we're expecting a further update. But what is important is that we do know that disruptions made because of the late opening, there is now an extension of time. So at the end of that extension of time, you are then going to assess generally. If they are satisfied that the requirement of the law has been satisfied, they will make a call. There is no, it happened in Bayelsa. Okay? So, because the challenge is that there is nothing that is happening that is new. the terrain, the Nigerian electoral topography is almost the same.
Anambra State is not even, you remember the Idemili factor. The
yes.
phenomenon in Idemili North and Idemili South,
so
that delayed the conclusion of the election, I think in 2017 or so.
Yeah.
So I think it's not new to INEC, but the problem here is the INEC was sure of those local governments and those polling units and what at the time. But this time,
there is an assessment that will happen. So let's discuss.
I find it difficult. I find it difficult on the test of reasonability to just agree that what INEC is trying to do now is correct. To the extent that they fixed an election, that the election is going to start from 8:30 and end by 2:30 time frame. They extended it. By the time they were extending it. The parameters upon which they were relying on were known to them. In so and so place, no election takes place, no election took place. In so and so place, no election took place, no election took place. So they ought to know the data, the statistics where election did not take place is before them.
Because in law, actually, I think that
by 10:30, 55% of the, which is the half of the polling units, had opened and were running. Okay?
55%.
Yes, 55%.
At 10:30.
At 10:30.
Was that good enough?
No, that's what I'm saying. At least half. That's not good enough. But later in the day, many other places opened. So the challenge is to be able to access the places where these disruptions took place and where transportation challenges did not enable them to deploy. When you put all of that together, you can then cut out that place and say, we will do this tomorrow, or we will. And I think the law allows INEC. But if you read that statement, they kept talking about looking at what the law permits them to do. And if you know INEC, it's even in terms of how much of obedience to court orders, it has signposted itself as a strong rule of law organization, and I think we should encourage them to be able to do that.
I know Yaga Africa did a breakdown based on their PVT on how the polls open. I don't know.
On our PVT.
Well, here, you're a member of the board, I know. So if we can put that up and look at the sequence of what INEC did, in terms of poll opening, according to Yaga Africa, they say by 9:30 a.m., 28% of polling units commence accreditation and voting. By 10:30 a.m., 50% of polling units commence accreditation and voting. And at noon, 81% of polling units commence accreditation and voting. And it said also that 229 of 248 polling units reporting by 12:30 p.m. And I think it's just less than 20% that had issues by noon, which I think this is one of the places, this is one of the areas where the problem came from. Because by noon, it's 1%. Even if it's only 10% that you are not able to have election, it's still a problem.
No, even one person who has come out to vote, his right to vote has to be protected.
Let me look at it like this. Even that 20% is huge enough for INEC to extend voting. However, the question is, at the time INEC opened voting by 8:30, and they said 2:30 the voting will end, we know that if you come after 2:30, whether you are ready to vote or not, you might not be allowed to vote because the time has passed. The reason INEC is extending because they now know that the reasons why the voting could not be concluded was their own reason. That's why they are now extending time. But what I'm saying now is that if 20% from the data before us was the area that were not voting by 12 noon, INEC cannot tell us at this stage that they don't know the time.
That it will end.
It will end.
All right, let's look at further, because we need to wrap up this conversation. There are further details that Yaga Africa provided based on their data, in fact, based on the senatorial district in Anambra North, Anambra South, and Anambra Central. I hope that we'll be able to have that on the screen so we can just wrap up the conversation. Okay, there you go. So in Anambra Central, 64% had before 10:30 a.m. and not open by 12 noon, about 17%. In Anambra South, not open 22.5%. In Anambra North, not open by 12 noon, 13.2%. Let's wrap up this conversation. Your thoughts quickly, your final thought on this.
Well, what I want to say is that from my observation in the field, in areas where you had the problem with the device, there were voters there. And the law allows that in an election, when you say 2 o'clock, you are talking about the time for somebody to report to the polling unit. Somebody who must have been there before 2 o'clock will have to vote, even if you extend it to 10 o'clock in the night.
Yeah.
If he was there before 2 o'clock. So he will have to vote. So some of the voters who were there at the polling units and the device did not allow them to exercise their franchise, you can extend to whatsoever time that you can accommodate them. That is what the law says.
All right, we need to close.
I'm not saying that they don't have the right to extend. I want to make that point very clear. But we now have the statistics of the percentage of inaccessibility to voting materials or to vote. Therefore, it will not be too right for INEC to make it an open-ended. There must be some specifics.
All right,
because some specifics.
Yeah, on this conduct, on what we have, the stalemate. What is the way forward?
Well, the way forward is to update us, to keep us in the know. The transparency that has followed this process needs to continue, and that's important, so that a lot of people are brought up to scratch as to what the situation.
I must sincerely thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Mr. Aikpopo Martins John, first Vice President of the NBA, thank you for coming. Mr. Ezenwa, I will detain you, not like the police would do, but we stay with us on the program. And Mr. Aniedi Ikewag, it's good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Now,
Nice to see you again.
Thank you so much, a former resident electoral commissioner with INEC. Thank you so much for coming. We'll take a break, everyone. And when we come back, it's going to be straight up on security. What was done and what was not done. We assess the situation. The election is not over. We are monitoring. Some people are still voting. What is INEC saying? We also try to reach out to INEC to hear from their own side of things, how they want to move forward from this stalemate. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.